那我就继续讲下去了。好，然后接下来 Sir 他要怀疑这些东西，他要怀疑这6个假设，他认为过去我们对于理性的看法都是错误的，知道也不是错误，是有很大的问题。对，然后他就针对这6个特色。
Sir opposes these 6 classical models, and he says that they're wrong, and now he gives 6 doubts on these models.
对，好。然后他对于第一个，对比一下。他对于第一个假设就是理性的行动是信念与欲望导致的这个东西，他认为理性的行动都不会是由信念和欲望导致的。一般来说，这2个东西它只会导致没有理性或非理性的行动。对，那一般而言啊，一个失去理智的人，他没有办法他才没有办法做出欲望之外的合理的选择。那一个合理的行动，它必须要考量非常多理由，然后在这些考量之中做出选择。那理性的运作，它假定了一个我们的意向状态跟选择之间的之中有一个 gap， 有一个缺口。如果我们不假定这个缺口的话，那我们就没有办法理性的做决定。同时，这代表了必须要如果我们不承认有缺口的存在的话，信念和欲望才能真正在因果上导致行动发生。这就像有一个人他有毒瘾，他染上海洛因，但同时他也想把它戒掉，但是他会无法抵抗，他会因为他的欲望去继续打他的海洛因。对，那这并不会是一个合理理性的一个行动。
Okay, the first doubt is rational actions are not caused by beliefs and desires. So there is a gap between the intentional states, between the set of intentional states on the basis of which I make my decision and the actual making of the decision. First, there is the gap of rational decision making, where you try to make up your mind what you're going to do. Here, the gap is between the reasons for making up your mind and the actual decision that you make. Second, there is a gap between the decision and the action. Yeah.
你帮我讲后面。
好，还没有吗？
对。好，你帮我把第一个讲完了。有啊，就是对啊，还有一个地方就是刚刚提到那个 gap， 就是Sir 有认为说我们意识当中，我们觉得我们有 free will， 其实就在那个 gap 里面。对，然后对，那如果要使我们的行动或我们的思考、我们的考虑是有意义的话，那我们必须要承认就是有其他选择的可能性，就是在欲望跟信念之外。再来是第一个特征，第一个怀疑。
Yeah. Okay. So there is a third gap that arises for actions and activities extended in time, a gap between the initiation of the action and its continuation to completion. Okay. Now, 杨哥论文有讲。
啊
？Two points.
没有东西可以去填补那个 gap 的那个空白，我们找不到任何东西可以去填补它。第二个，即使我们对于那个 gap 我们有经验过那个 gap， 但是它一切都有可能是错觉。
So nothing can fill the gap, right?
对。
And
还有可能是错觉。
Even though we have all these experiences, could not be the whole thing be an illusion? Is the question. And he said, yes, it could. Our gappy experiences are not self-validating.
Okay, quick question. The gap between action and reason?
The gap between action and reason.
Right, is that what when you referring to?
对，没错。
Yeah, action and reason and action, right?
那我再讲第二个怀疑。他认为理性并不都是在遵守一个符合理性的规则。我们在运用理性的时候，并不是全部都在遵守那个规则。对，然后他这边有一个例子很有趣，就是他是拿过去那个阿基里斯跟乌龟的故事，然后拿来做一个例子。对，就是他们在对话，就是说阿基里斯就在跟他讲说若 P 则 Q， 那现在 P 成立了，然后问乌龟答案，但乌龟怎样都不讲，然后就是他不断的，阿基里斯不断的在用各式各样的那个形式逻辑，一直在问他问题，但是乌龟始终不去做任何的回答，对，但是瑟尔在这边提到说，即使乌龟在这边不做任何回答，也不代表它是非理性，对，它一样有可能是理性的，对，他用这个东西来反驳，就是前面说的，就是我们都是在无意识的在使用一些规则，对，我们在运作理性的时候一定是这样，对，好。
So rationality is not entirely or even largely a matter of following rules of rationality. So he gives the example of Achilles and the turtle. And Achilles explains to the turtle, like, if P then Q. Like, for example, if it rains, the ground will be wet. And then the turtle says, I don't understand the reason. And then the turtle said, write down. Achilles wrote it down, and the turtle said, I still didn't understand. And it was going on, the discussion was going on, and so it's like, you can never see the reason when you set up these rules, like using P, you have there, like P, and if P and Q, if P is Q, then everything is Q, right?
Huh? If P.
对。
哦，对。好，然后接下去就是，同时我们可以给电脑一些图形，我们可以给它一些运算规则啊，给它一些符号啊，同时电脑也可以运算得很好，对，但是这不能代表说电脑它拥有一个理性的思考的一个能力，对，那从这个悖论啊，从这个悖论可以看出两个主要的哲学观点，就是第一个，规则在推论的有效性上面是没有任何的作用，然后第二个就是也有关于 gap， 就是一方面，我们要区分蕴含跟效应的逻辑关系，那另外一方面，就是做推论这件事情是我们人类的自发性的活动，它并不是说给你规则你就一定要这样做，对 ，OK。
So there is no separate faculty of rationality. Example, there is no way you can make a statement without committing yourself regarding such question as, is it true or false? Is it consistent or inconsistent with other things I have said? So the constraints of rationality are not an extra faculty in addition to intentionality and language. Once you have intentionality and language, you already have phenomena that intentionally and constitutively possess the constraints of rationality.
接下来第三个，他的第三个怀疑就是那个理性能力。
刚刚不是第三个吗？
对，第二个。啊，对，现在才是第三个。
我刚刚讲第三个。Yeah, I just said the third one.
Okay. 就是理性能力并不是个别的一个能力，对吧？对啊，就是理性限制与内在于意象状态的结构跟语言结构之中。对，那换句话说，就是我们只要拥有意象状态跟我们的语言能力，这个时候我们就已经拥有了理性的限制。对，然后讲简单一点，然后即便我们是理性的动物，但是我们也有可能做出不理性的行为。那么人类的行动，如果是在因果上可以被充分决定的话，那我们就不是在理性的范围之内。
Okay, this was just I already said.
OK 然后第四个就是意志薄弱，有关前面意志薄弱的那个东西，就是它是一般非理性的自然形式，它是我们拥有 gap 的自然会发生的事情，它是一个自然的结果，就是无论你行动的那个原因的结构是多么完美的，那意志薄弱的情形一样有可能是会发生的。当我们清醒的时候，就是我们所面对的很多的可能性，我们可能会去做很多事情，对，而且这些可能性是很开放的，对。那我们过去的背景会影响到我们的行为，而限制到我的行动的可能性。但是意志薄弱的出现，它就是有一个一直存在的那个前面谈到的那个 gap， 它所提供的那个不确定性，然后对啊，所以会造成说我们时常下定决心去做一件事，但是最后我们去做了别的事。
No matter how perfectly you structure the antecedents of your action, weakness of will is always possible. Here is how. At any given point in our waking lives, we are confronted with an indefinitely large range of possibilities. Of course, in real life, there will be restrictions set by my background, by my biological limitations, and by the culture that I have been brought up in. The background restricts my sense of the possibilities that are open to me at any given time, but I still have an indefinite range of real options that I am capable of perceiving as options. Weakness of will arises simply from the fact that at any point the gap provides an indefinitely large range of choices open to me, and some of them will seem attractive even if I have already made up my mind to refuse them.
优点就是，跟 classical model 相反的，就是我们行动中反而是拥有独立与欲望的那个理性，就是我们其实常常会不因为我们的欲望去做一些行动，对，那么就是这边他首先想要反驳的一个就是我们前面讲到，就是为什么我们去做一个理性的行动，全部都是只有可能是因为我们的欲望或者是我们的信念，对吧？广义上，欲望它是有一个道德评价，并且这个欲望它并不全然都是自我本位的那种东西。对，那一个理性的思虑过程，它必须会是一个行为者他曾经有过的欲望啊，或者是信念。那他在这边都没有出现过任何的外在的一些理由。对，那他认为这样的观点是一个荒谬的结果。对于一个人来说，无论事实如何，无论他过去做过什么，或者是他未来会做什么，除了在某个特定的当下，他根据他的很多动机的那个群组，因为他拥有那么多的动机，对，去做一件事情，在此之外不会有任何可能。这边讲的有点不太顺，对，好，那我这边可以举一个例子，就是其实这个例子很不错，我觉得。我们常常就是我们去酒吧喝酒啊，对，我们很想要喝啤酒，我们就买啤酒。但是我们在买啤酒的时候，我们绝对不会想要付钱，我们并不会有付钱的这个欲望。但是我们很自然而然的，我们最后还是会去付这个钱。对，这个时候我们去做这件事情，它就跟我们的欲望其实没有关系的，而且我们必须要付钱才会是一个理性的行动，对啊，才算是一个理性的行为，对。然后。他认为传统模型之中，它会涉及到两个困境。第一个就是我们所有的推论都是有关于手段，而不是目的的，所以行动的外在理由其实不存在。就是他所谓的外在理由，就是就不是我们心里面真的想要涉及到的那些，它都不会成为我们行动的理由，对吧？就是那个 classical model。对，然后第二个就是，我们的所有动机群组里面，我们的主要目的都是理性范围之外，都不是理性。我们的做一件事的主要的原因都不会是理性。
Okay. Contrary to the classical model, there are desire-independent reasons for action. So I will, in short, just mention the example that you mentioned. Suppose you go into a bar and order a beer. The waiter brings the beer and you drink it. Then the waiter brings you the bill and you say to him, I have looked at my motivational set and I find no internal reason for paying for this beer. Not at all. Ordering and drinking the beer is one thing. Finding something in my motivational set is something else. The two are logically independent. Paying for the beer is not something I desire for its own sake, nor is it a means to an end or constitutive of some end that is represented in my motivational set.
接下来第6点就是，他要回应的就是，我们在我们的行动中，时常会有不一致的理由，而且很常见，而且我们也不能避免。但是这不代表说，我们拥有这些不一致的理由就是非理性，对。就像我们下定决心去做出一个决定，但是这个决定它本身也会发生很多冲突。就像可能我现在就要去巴黎，我现在很想要去巴黎。但是我不想要在飞机场等飞机，这样子。然后我们时常要满足一个欲望，就要放弃别的欲望，对。但是在这之中，即使它不一致的话，即使它是不一致的，我们依然不能说，这种状况发生是一个非理性的状况。
Inconsistent reasons for action are common and indeed inevitable. Right now, today, I very much want to be in Paris, but I also want very much to be in Berkeley. And this is not a bizarre situation, rather it seems that we have an inconsistent set of ends. And even after you have made up your mind, you decide, okay, I'm going to Paris. That decision itself introduces all sorts of other conflicts. You want to go to Paris, but you do not want to stand in line at airports. You do not want to eat airplane food. You do not want to sit next to people who are trying to put their elbow where you are trying to put your elbow, and so on. There are just all kinds of things that you do not want to happen, which you know are going to happen once you try to carry out your decision to go to Paris and to go by plane. By satisfying one desire, you frustrate other desires.
OK， 这就现在大家有什么问题啊
Okay, that's the end of the speech.
还有啊，应该够了，应该够了。
Okay, well then, do you remember my question? Do you remember? I'll just say it one more time. And I think what I'm looking for is, can you give an example? Maybe give an example of how this works. So Cyril was saying if there is only determinism, then there's no way to place responsibility, either on an individual or on a group or whatever. Therefore, we need the idea of free will to understand morality, though free will itself is not enough to place responsibility, right? Can you give an example of that? Can you talk about that more a little bit?
就是要讲，
也举一个例子。
你说光拥有自由还不够的这个例子。
对。
就我刚刚有举一个例子啊，就是在这边是有程度上的不同，对我不会说完全没有，就是当我们在可能喝醉酒，或是吸完安非他命之后，我们去杀一个人，我们很挂的时候，我们把一个人杀掉，跟一个我们现在是清醒的，同时非常清醒，然后非常冷静的去杀死一个人，我们所拥有的道德责任，在职责上会不同。
Depends on the situation how you do the action. Like for example, if you murder when you are sober and drunk, it's differently considered as.
Especially maybe if somebody you're drunk, so they should not give you more alcohol, but they continue to serve alcohol. So the responsibility is not just the free will of yourself for doing the murder, blah blah blah, right?
Just the level is different.
No, I think
when you do something and influence on
level,
alcohol, or when you're completely clear-minded, the level of responsibility is different.
Within yourself.
It's just the level of
But you go to court, I mean, many people plead I was drunk in court and it actually works in some cases.
right.
So in terms of also other people's understanding.
Okay, that's fine. Let's move on to the next question then.
Okay, I have a question about the gap. Could you clarify a little bit more about the gap? Yeah.
The gap.
Yeah, because you said that when he mentioned that, I didn't quite understand it. Then you said it in English really fast.
Yeah.
So I'm still not exactly sure about this kind of gap.
That's just a gap in time, no?
No,
No?
not in time.
The understanding.
Is a gap between the action and the reason?
对啊。
So what exists in the gap?
Well, so, I'm sorry. Let's just. I didn't mean to interrupt, but define that more.
你可以再说一遍那个 gap 比较清楚。
就是我前面有提到，就是一个，如果我们的行为，我们行动的理由，都像是决定论式的话，都是我们每一个理由都是因果上 causally 造成我们行动发生的话，那这个时候我们并没有，我们这样并不会有我们在做决定的意思。 那 gap 就是出现在，我拿起这支笔，我举手，你问我有什么理由，我也没有理由，我举起来，我都在做这些事情，对吧？这个就是一个 gap。他认为 gap 就是这个，就是我们没办法去找出任何的，它不会是一个先行条件，在先行条件跟先行条件之间，它总是会有那个东西出现。他没有讲得非常清楚，但是他是认为说那总是会出现的一个东西。对，可以帮我翻译吗？
他不用翻译。
Okay, okay.
Can you translate that in English one more time?
Anyway,
I can read. Okay, I didn't read it all. I can read it now all maybe.
Yeah.
Rational actions are not caused by beliefs and desires. In general, only irrational and non-rational actions are caused by beliefs and desires. The operation of rationality presupposes that there is a gap between the set of intentional states, on the basis of which I make my decision, and the actual making of the decision. That is, unless I presuppose that there is a gap, I cannot get started with the process of rational decision making. To see this point, you need only consider cases where there is no gap, where the belief and the desire are really causally sufficient. This is the case, for example, where the drug addict has an overpowering urge to take heroin, and he believes that this is heroin, so compulsively he takes it. In such a case, the belief and the desire are sufficient to determine the action because the addict cannot help himself. Right? But that is hardly the model of rationality. Such cases seem to be outside the scope of rationality altogether. We presuppose that there is a gap between the causes of the action in the form of beliefs and desires and the effect in the form of the action. This gap has a traditional name. It is called freedom of the will. In order to engage in rational decision making, we have to presuppose free will.
然后同时我要补充一点，就是gap 这个东西 ，gap 其实就是我们所谓的 self。他在后面有提到，就是他认为我们对于self 的经验跟意识，其实这就是这个就是我们行动跟理由之间的那个 gap。
The gap is the self.
在行动跟理由之间，总是要有一个人去掌握这些理由。
So the self is
就是 self， 然后我们去做出这个行动。
So here's the action, and here's the reason, and here's the gap, and together they are, and the reason and the gap are together forming the actions. The reason, action, from the action, and the action is any other things coming through your brain and interfering with the reason.
So the reason can gap 一起做一个 action.
gap 对啊，没错 ，gap 因为 gap 就是 self， 对啊。
Gap's the self.
So gap is the self. Yes, it's the reason itself.
As long as I understand you, you want to say that Sir insisted on the separation of reason and the actions from desires and beliefs, and you just mentioned one example when we go into the bar, right? We are drinking a beer. We want to drink a beer. This is our desire, but when we pay, then we just act from the reason, right? Because we should pay. But and he said it's a good example. But actually, when we go to bar, we buy a beer, right?
Yeah.
So this is two things you can't really separate. And if you take this as an example of pure rationality, which does have nothing to do with our desires and beliefs, I would say that there are two serious mistakes. First of all, when you want to drink a beer, right, and you go to the bar and you pay for that, you pay only because you want to drink that beer. So your rational action is at the first place caused by a desire of drinking beer. So actually you can't really separate. It works very well when you separate it. It looks nice, but actually it's a one process. It's not just now I want to drink and now I pay. It's totally something separated. It's not something different. It's the one.
You want to run up before you pay.
Yeah, exactly. And sometimes you have to pay first, right? And but this doesn't matter if you pay first or later. The thing you do is caused by your desire. That you want something, that you want, right? You want something, and then you are ready or you agree to do something else just to satisfy your need or your desire. So I can't really see how this rationality will be really free from our desires. Another thing is belief. That can be separated from beliefs. This kind of rational action is rooted very much in the beliefs, because I believe that I should do that. Because why we don't do that? Why I don't pay? Why should I pay? why should I pay, right? Why should I pay? Because he's a pure, no, I believe that I should, because if I don't pay, someone will catch me and will fine me, right? Some money, I will be arrested or something. I don't know that because I never experienced that. But I believe that's true because I heard from someone who didn't pay, right? And then security came, they just closed the guys, right? So I can see that how you can totally, I'm not saying that they're not different at all, like rationality and beliefs, of course, because people can believe in UFO, right? And because of that do something weird, right? But this is different level of rationality, but I can't really see how can you totally separate it. So like, because it is written here, right, that the rational actions are not caused by beliefs and desires. I don't really, that's why I will ask you, how can you really separate, you know, there's another example, because this example doesn't work to me, doesn't work for me.
Okay, let's look for an answer.
最后一个那个如何分开嘛，还是最后一句关键的问题。
对，关键是因为你要买啤酒，所以你已经有 desire， 所以你知道要付钱，所以你还是怎么分开这个 desire， 喝啤酒的 desire 跟 rationality
就是这个理性，你不能理性跟欲望，理性欲望信念，你不能完全分开。
我没有把它分开。
对，但是这个是 rational actions are not caused by beliefs and desires, but they are rooted in beliefs and desires.
OK，
我这边讲的是一个。还有没有别的例子？
除了那个？
有关于一些义务，就是我们常常都，我们日常生活中常会发生这种事。再让我说一次刚刚的那个例子，我可能没有讲得太清楚。就是，他那边提到的是一个理性的行动，那我们会因为很多理由。我们会凭借着很多理由去做一个行动。那如果说我们的理由只有可能是信念或者是欲望的话，特别是欲望，如果都是欲望的话，那似乎是不会让我们有理性的行动。对，他的意思是这样。所以说我们去做一个要付钱的这个动作，事实上是我们有别的认知在里面，我们有别的信念跟其实它后面有分一种叫做内在的 reason 跟一个外在的 reason。对，那外在的 reason 是来自于一些知识跟我们既有的一些规定。对，我们在社会运作上面，我们人类后来在社会上面建构出来的东西。对，那所以他刚提到的是说，如果说都是因为欲望的话，那么就不会有所谓理性的行动。就像我们付钱是一个义务嘛，对啊，没错。但是我们事实上我们去做，我们有付钱，其实付钱也可以是一个欲望，就是我们去把钱付给他。但是即使有这个欲望，它还是依附在一个外在的那个我们社会的那个制度的理由上面。对，我不知道我讲的有点乱。
My point is that you can't really like totally separate it. You know, this is I'm always saying that the rationality actually is just the higher level of desire. Actually, yeah. 就是想更高的，就是欲望的再高一层。
二阶的。
对，二阶对啊，就像这个 meta desire, way of satisfying them.
因为他会认为说那个即使是有二阶的。但那个二阶，它并不是纯粹的是来自于我们一个内在的欲望，我们会有那个要付钱的欲望，就是那个二阶的欲望，其实是来自于一个，就是你刚刚讲的，其实就是他说的意思，就是我们不想要被，不想被打，被抓去关啊。
So do you have other questions, Michael?
I would like to ask about your personal view on this. I would say, I mean, maybe a bit provocatively, that there's no free will at all. There's no free will. It doesn't exist. Because every single action is caused by so many forces that sometimes they are so small and so complicated that we are not aware of them. And then we might claim that my action is kind of free, that I freely decide that I want to conduct this action. Even if I take a cup, right, to drink tea, which you were doing this with a pen, right? That even this little action might be caused by the simple fact that I'm thirsty, or I'm being neurotic, I'm nervous, or this is my habit, or I want to touch this surface because my aesthetic experiences from the childhood made me sensitive to this color. There are thousands of things that influences our behavior, and so there is no space for the free of influences decision about anything. So what
do you want to ask? What if there is no free will, or respond to?
What would you say about this if there is no free will at all?
这个就回到我们一开始的那个难题，对，就像我刚刚说的，他其实是要为我们为什么会有自由意志提出一个说明、一个解释，而不是形上学式的认为我们有自由意志，对，这是一个前提。那要回答这个问题，其实就是怎么说呢？如果要这样讲的话，那道德责任就不见了。就是如果一切就像如果我们就用这种方式来看的话，那道德责任就会不见。
那这样可以回到这个 Ethan the first question. It makes sense, of course, but then I have to keep doubting you. Why? Simple why. Why? Because for example, in Indian logic, there is and Buddhist version is simplified. You have in Chinese you say 中 in and li. The yu, so it's like the statement, the reason for that statement, and then there's an example, But here you have just two elements. You just say must be free will, because if there's no free will, there's no responsibility. And now there is a lack of example. That's why I guess I was Ian asking, okay, but why? Why is so? Now it's the same. There's no free will. So we just say, okay, there is no responsibility. Okay, cool. So we need the responsibility. So then we presuppose that there is a free will, because without free will, we don't have a responsibility. And there is this is like a vicious circle. You know what I mean? Because we are just proving this with another, like proving A with B and B with A. Because without this, we need it. So we just need, okay, this exists, but we still don't have any other proof of that.
怎么讲？因为他是要解释一个我们为什么会有这样的感觉而已，他没有要证实这个东西，懂我的意思吗？
But then the reason is based on the 感觉 on feeling. So this is very unreasonable. So the reason is unreasonable.
你要怎么说？你可以再帮我把它问题翻得清楚一点。
我不太清楚。I think okay. I mean, you're doubting Searle actually. You're not doubting.
Yeah, sure. I'm just asking because you just said.
我应该是有没有讲清楚的部分，因为我在看的时候，
No, I don't know. This
不是
issue for me is
如
all
果
the
自由意志，对不对？自由意志，为什么我们需要自由意志？因为这样，如果没有自由意志，就没有责任，对不对？因为他的这个假设就是这样吧，没有责任。
其实不是这样。其实说我们会有责任，那可能我们已经预设了一些东西，我们 presuppose 一些东西。他在讲的不是 ontology 啊，他是在说我们 presuppose 什么东西，对，就是他在解释的是我们人类的倾向，认为恶性循环会出现，应该是在他的 ontology 的部分，他是用一种比较现象学式的方向来讨论它。
So I think he's trying to explain how we have the idea of free will. Why we come to this idea of free will, right? 是这样吗？他要解释为什么？
为什么？对啊，为什么我们会有这样的感觉
？Free will is the free will. The gap is the self, but also the gap is the free will. Yeah. So the
idea of free will.
Yes, the gap is the free will, and the gap can be filled with nothing. 对不对？是空的，不能加东西，所以 free will is empty。
对吧？我一直在试图想要攻击他，可是我觉得他很聪明，他把一些可能碰到的危险，他就说我没有，我不是这样，我没有说得很明白，对，所以打不了他。
We have maybe a couple more minutes left. Did you want to say anything else to finish, or did you want to have? Does anybody have one more question that nobody asked?
Short question.
Short question.
It seems that the idea of free will is kind of wishful thinking idea. In some sense, we would like to have this notion to change our perspective on ourselves, to ascribe free notion to us, so that would make us feel, of course, free from determinism, right? And in some way upgrade us to a different position than as a person without free will. That I'm totally determined by so many factors. So actually, I'm a prisoner. Right? I'm a prisoner. So I think it exists or it doesn't, but it's this kind of human production that it might just enable us to understand us better in some way, as upgraded on the upgraded position.
A higher class of people.
Egos for the existence of people.
Okay, that's a good.
Yeah. King Kong.
Last comment.
Final comment. Something to close up. To finish with.
Well, you can say Johnson is still alive. If you have any questions, you can
Wrote to him.
write to him. He's 80 years old now. So.
Maybe you could finish with who. Now that John Searle proposed this in the 1970s.
2001.
2001 he wrote this book. Okay, never mind. So has anybody else now worked on the same subject after him? Now in the last 10 years? No. Only King Kong. Well,
一个问题，可能就是最后，那你自己觉得有 free will 吗？还是你觉得？
我自己觉得其实就是 illusion 吧。我自己认为其实对吧，自由意志其实不太可能存在，我是这样认为。
Okay. Well, thank you.